there were two kinds of dreams. Those you realized were dreams from the start, and those you didn't until you woke up. Either way, it didn't change the fact that the events of the dream were beyond the dreamer's control. What set them apart was whether or not the dream felt strange to the dreamer. And this thing I've been seeing now was without doubt the latter. Something was swaying in front of me like a silhouette, staring at me. What? No. Who was this? Every human shape I saw was so horribly tiny. Children? Were those children? There were dozens, hundreds, no, maybe even over 1,000 children around me swaying. They started speaking as though they were singing.
緑の泉で僕らは遊ぶ。緑の泉は楽しいところ。霧が深くて外が見えない。だけど僕らは怖くない。ここに太陽はないけれど。僕らは太陽じゃないけれど。だからこそ泉は緑で、ムッターの色に染まっている。僕らの色に染まっている。ねえ、愛してる。ねえ、抱いてくれる？僕らが必要。僕らが怖い。ここが僕らのお家だから帰りたいなんて思わない。ここが僕らのゆりかごだから帰るところはどこにもない。永遠なんてわからない。だけど永遠にここにいたい。ずっとここが僕の家。ずっとここにいるみんなが兄弟。緑の泉で僕らは遊ぶ。緑の泉は楽しいところ。僕らは太陽じゃないけれど。本当の太陽が生まれたらきっと僕らは消えてしまう。
I didn't understand a word they said. The childlike voices seemed cheerful, yet for some reason my heart ached as I listened to them. The one thing I did understand was that they meant no harm. In fact, they seemed rather friendly. They all spoke as if I was their friend, one of them. I didn't know how that makes sense, nor did I want to. And at that moment, I experienced something I never thought I would. I felt unconscious inside a dream. Let me tell you a story from my past. A memory of a certain family. The circumstances, skeletons in the closet, common to any household, yet kept sealed under a veil of darkness. They were sensitive to these things and could not leave a pure soul that had been wounded unchecked. Let's take a closer look. We have a lone boy here. He lost his parents at a young age and was taken in by the family of one of their friends. But was that really the truth? The boy was young. Not only did he have no memories of his parents, he didn't even know their names or birthdays. He was given no choice but to believe the backstory, which was only latently imprinted on him. That was hardly an unheard of situation. In the end, he was told who he was by those who now called themselves his parents, and he believed it without question. If one removed the emotional circumstances of the matter and only judged it through reason, they would have realized just how vague that information was. However, there were very few children in the world who would ever be able to take such an objective stance with their parents. In other words, it was extremely easy to have children believe fabrications, especially those pertaining to their roots. And that was what happened to this boy. A peculiar but hardly difficult situation to design. An immoral act that was literally like taking candy from a baby. But parents or guardians shouldn't be able to commit such a malicious act. People tend to overlook such cases because this type of common sense has been instilled into our society, a trap that lurks within our day-to-day lives. Of course, it took some effort to hide those sorts of things from the eyes of the public, but but it was hardly an impossible feat. It was a problem that could influence a person's entire life, yet, most of the time, it was difficult to prevent. Even though everyone would agree that the people who took advantage of such situations were wicked beyond salvation. On the outside, the boy was welcomed into the family with open arms. At the very least, his foster mother and the girl the same age as him, or at least that was what he was told, were fond of him. But even if their affection was genuine, who could say they really lived in the same environment as him? What about your parents, your siblings? Are they the real deal? What about your husband, your wife? Did you really choose them out of your own will? No one doubts things like these, and that is why there are people who take advantage of that fact. Even now, the boy's memories of that time were considerably vague. He couldn't remember the things he did day to day in detail, and perhaps he was better off not remembering. He had only one vivid and unforgettable memory of his foster father dying before his eyes. No, to be more accurate, of him being murdered. It had been the boy's own friend who had done it, and the boy himself helped to cover it up. They were two boys of tender years at the time, although one could say they had matured quite early. Perhaps that was just one of their talents. They made his death look like an accident. The deceased was not one to get drunk easily, but anyone who was capable of getting a bit tipsy and missing a step climbing the stairs. He had just been unlucky that there had been a blade lying at the bottom that stabbed right through his neck. No one was surprised. After all, there was hardly room in his house that had no sharp objects displayed on the wall. No one suspected that children could have been the real perpetrators. After all, on the outside they had been a perfectly happy family, a fact they used to their advantage to veil the truth. The thing that had surprised people was that this seemingly harmless man had been hiding a secret passage that led underground in his room. What they found at the end had been a room that looked uncannily like a mad scientist's laboratory, straight out of a horror movie. The boys weren't even the ones who discovered the body. Had they been found having a connection to the lab, they would undoubtedly have become suspects. As such, they feigned ignorance. The boy's friend had first acted exasperated and annoyed by the idea, but in the end he acquiesced. The man's whereabouts, who until then was thought of having disappeared, only came to light when the scent of rotting flesh began to fill the house. Years later, his friend told the boy he thought they left the body to rot to make the autopsy more difficult. Perhaps it was so, and that was why he regretted his choice. He did not know whether that was the right thing to do. He hadn't covered the incident up out of self-preservation. It wasn't like he'd been the one to actually kill the man, so he hadn't felt scared of the crime at the time, but neither did he do it to protect his friend. It seemed his friend was openly proud of his deed, and that had forced the boy to make that choice. For once the whole thing came to light, his friend would doubtlessly bluntly state his motive if only asked for it. What would happen as a result? Everything would fall apart, the boy's entire family. His friend told him that family had never existed to begin with, but as long as there were those who believed it had, the boy had to do everything within his power to protect it. So he had chosen to cover up the incident and succeeded. But in the end, had that really been a good thing? Could he really say he hadn't been ashamed at all? As a result, a foreign substance had mixed in with his family, with his day-to-day life, one that carried the unreal stench of decay and death. His friend said it had been that way to begin with, but as long as there were those who believed in the fabrication, the boy couldn't let it be destroyed. Though his friend had done the killing, the boy himself was no less a murderer in that sense. It would have put him more at ease if he had been able to pass the killing off as a disappearance, but that had been impossible. Passion could only drive a child's limit so far. And so he regretted his action to this day. What should he have done? What could he have done? Should he have said something? Should he remain silent? Even now. Yes, even now, he didn't know what he should have done. He'd have to come to a conclusion someday, as much as he was scared of that day coming. If only time would stop. If only this moment would last in eternity. Though he thought that. The fight happened. The very fight on that fated day. He couldn't believe that his friend was just up and leaving him and moving forward while he himself had yet to come to terms. He was trying to bring the sealed truth to light by himself. So he had to stop him. He'd wanted to stop him. So in the end, it really had been self-preservation. He'd been unable to let go of the present where he and Cosme happened to be on such good terms. In the end, all had boiled down to that point alone. Chapter 12. Skeleton in the Closet. The first thing she felt was the presence of satisfaction. Slowly welling up as though she'd been sleeping at the bottom of the sea. Cosme Ayase had woken up a reborn person. It must have been raining outside. She could tell from the slight change of pressure in the room. But it wouldn't rain that long. The rain was soft and gentle. It would probably be over by the time Cosme made her resolve to leave. And so, she decided to keep watching his face for a while longer.
レンの綺麗な寝顔が好きって言ったら、やっぱり今でも怒るのかな。
Ren was breathing peacefully. So many surprising things had happened in such a short time. Cosme herself was having trouble making sense of it all. Of herself, of Himuro, of Father Trifa. And...
Kasumi... すまない。
レン。
She was startled by Ren's sudden bout of sleep talk. His face scrunched up and was clearly anguish.
どうして謝ってるの？本当は分かってる。レンっていつも私のことだけを考えてくれていた。あの時だって素人の喧嘩だって、きっとそれが原因なんでしょう。
It was a distant memory of her childhood, of her father's death. She had no proof, but after spending so much time with Ren, she felt like she finally understood everything. Under normal circumstances, Ren would have been perfectly justified to hate her. That had to be why she kept watching over his face as he slept. She loved Ren from the bottom of her heart, but she didn't have the courage to turn to him and look him in the eye. That was probably why she kept looking at his face now. She gently kissed him. She was worried it'd wake him up, and a part of her actually wished he would. That silent yet soft kiss was filled with Cosme's feelings.
私もあんたに秘密があるんだよ。
Ren would probably notice this kiss after he woke up, then he'd go desperately searching for her once he realized she was gone. That was just how he was. Ren had always been protecting her.
これで2度目だね。大きくなっても変わらないんだ。私たちの関係って。
The boy who'd burned himself with secrets and kept trying to protect her. The girl who feigned ignorance as the boy put on a mask of false stoicism. Both were suffering. Their relationship was too earnest and clumsy.
でももういいよ。私は十分幸せだった。
She wiped away the tears that welled up in her eyes and turned her back to Ren. The resolve she'd finally mustered would waver if she looked at him any longer. She'd wanted to hear his voice one last time. But knowing him, he'd never approve of her actions. If anything, he'd force her to stay at this club and go all out on his own. She was sure of that. She had to keep that from happening. Otherwise, the cycle would just keep repeating. That was why she was satisfied with the sight of Ren's pretty sleeping face being her final memory of him. Her courage wouldn't fade away if he saw her off with that face. He'd been calling out her name in his sleep for a while now, Perhaps he was dreaming of her at that moment. That alone was enough for Cosme.
ありがとう。あんたは私なんかにはもったいない男だったよ。
She left without taking a shower. She didn't want Ren's scent to leave her. She pondered what she should wear, only to smile when she realized how silly she was to be seriously considering something like that.
やっぱこれだな。
In the end, she put on her Tsukino Sawa high uniform. It was a symbol of the day-to-day life she'd spent with Ren. Truly her Sunday best.
大好きだよ。レ。
She shut off the lights to cut ties to whatever lingering attachments she had left. Cosme left the bottomless pit, located on the western side of the central district, and headed for the east without the slightest hesitation. No one was out this late at night because of the serial killings. They doubtlessly locked their doors and holed themselves up in their homes. Even if there were people with greater sense of curiosity than fear, those were all the type that would hang out in the bottomless pit. At least Kane had already made sure none of them were left.
客がいないんだもん。タクシーなんか拾えるわけないよね。
She wished she'd taken up Shiro a while back and was joking off her to teach her how to ride a motorcycle. Then she could just steal his and not be forced to make this long trek. Just when had everything gone wrong? Cosme, Ren, and Shiro were no three amigos. Theirs was a relationship like a deformed triangle. No matter how one spun it, they were an unbalanced combination. Even so, they'd always been together. To put it in a bad way, they'd been selfish. But put in a good way, one could say they were tied by a relationship of mutual unreserve. That was enough for Cosme. She wanted nothing more, and she thought that was the way they'd always live. The nature of their relationship had changed considerably, but even so, she didn't want to think they'd completely broken apart, or that there was no going back. And that was why she'd settle everything this very night.
さあ、着いたけど、出迎えはないのかしら。
The light rain turned into a drizzle, eventually stopping completely and dispersing into mist as though reluctant to leave. The pale moon shone in a gap between the rain clouds above the church. She hadn't been directed where to go. This was simply the only place Kasumi could think of. On that day.
こんにちは、綾瀬さん。
神父様。
She remembered what Kay had said, how that man was one of them. His smile and words triggered a severe irregularity in Cosme's brain.
私を殺すの。
That was the first thing Cosme blurted out in her confusion.
は？
By contrast, the priest responded in the flattest voice possible. When she saw the priest look as though she caught him off guard, Cosme herself grew confused.
あれ、神父様。
ええ、神父ですよ、綾瀬さん。先日あなたに教会まで案内していただいたバレリア・トリファです。
His smile brought her way back. For it was the same smile he'd given on that day they first met. Cosme's mind went blank for a moment. Her caution lost its footing and collapsed.
ああ。
The priest let out a sigh. At the weakness of people's souls. At the root of every man lay a craving to ignore reality and perceive only the convenient truths.
ここはいいところですね。
Trifa looked around the amusement park with love in his eyes. Truly the picture of tranquility itself.
ひょうたんから駒と言うべきか。実に面白いことになっている。リザからの贈り物とでも思いましょう。我に天運ありと。
シスター？
ええ。ああ、あなたには見えませんか。この子供たちが。
Trifa reached out as though he was caressing air, almost as if something or someone was there.
私も一人一人の名前は知らない。アーだのベーだのアインだのツバイ。
Ein is
し
one
か
in
し
German.
顔は覚えている。その魂を記憶している。かわいい子らだ。救ってやらねばなりますまい。
Zwei is two in German. Ein one, zwei two. She was hallucinating. At least she hoped she was. There was no way there were hundreds of children floating around Trifa.
死に別れた兄弟に再会できて嬉しいですか。その願いは叶えましょう。あなた方は私にとって勝利の天使だ。
兄弟。
Who is he talking about?
イザークが哀れでならない。そうでしょう。そうですとも。そしてだからこそ一人だけ仲間外れのヨハンもまたかわいそう。兄弟ならば皆が一緒に。彼らはそう望んでいますが、あなたはどうですか、綾瀬さん。
Trifa's eyes, always thin slits, widened. He slowly reached out for Cosme's cheek.
あなたに罪というものがあるのなら、それは無知であったこと。蚊帳の外はつらかったでしょう。仲間外れは悲しかったでしょう。いつも思っていたはずだ。私もその輪に入りたい。ならばよし。あなたにできることを教えましょう。彼らがあなたを誘ってくれる。彼らは傷つく子供を見ていられない。
His hand finally reached Cosme.
叱るのち、答えをお聞かせ願いたい。これは夢だが、夢ではない。
A memory of a certain family. The circumstances, skeletons in the closet, come in any household, yet kept sealed under a veil of darkness.
あなたはそれを知るべきだ。
The joyous voices of countless small children entered Cosme the moment the priest's hand touched her cheek. Yes, this was a skeleton in a closet. A story of a mother and many blessed children. Only those who were raised in similar circumstances could see it, but once seen, it would seize one's soul. The condition for seeing this dream was having been raised by an abnormal parent. There once was an organization called Lebensborn, the Font of Life. It was a welfare organization that had been founded in 1936 to mitigate the population decline in Germany after World War I, and to support the ever-growing number of widows and orphans created by the war. Germany had lost the Great War, and with that the country found itself in a state of hyperinflation brought about from paying off the enormous reparations forced onto them by the victors and the biting influence of the Great Depression. As a result, the unemployment rate rose to well over 30%. It went without saying that public order was a disaster. Virtually everyone living in Germany at the time had it hard in some way. That was why an organization like Lebensborn was born. To protect the women and children who would weave the future. Men were merely living goods meant to shed blood and die, so no one could argue they were useless when it came to succession and nurturing of life. In this era, there was only one thing for German men to do. It was to win the upcoming World War and reclaim the German pride and strength, to form the cornerstone that children of the next generation could be proud of. So the existence of an organization like Lebensborn, where women would nurture those new lives, was essential. The heroine of this dream thus conformed to the principle and became a member of the Font of Life. From the very beginning, she understood the concepts of the strength of motherhood and the significance of allotting fitting roles to both men and women, the importance of not stepping outside one's bounds, as well as respecting and helping one another, for that was the basis of love and happiness. She graduated from the Band of German Mothers, the BDM, above her peers. She, who was establishing herself in Lebensborn in the blink of an eye, ended up raising the seeds that would lead Germany to that bright future, was without a doubt a model German woman. As such, it was not particularly surprising that in contemporary Germany, she ended up obtaining one of the highest and most revered positions in the social stratum. Her influence was on par with an army major, in a Germany that was slowly rising from the depths of poverty and turning into the Totenkopf Empire. Her position was something even most men could only aspire to. Lisa Brenner, the woman who would later come to be called Babylon, the Great Mother. That was the starting point of what drove her life off the rails. Lisa understood her own nature. She is both glad and proud to have been born a woman. Never once did she consider competing for a position with a man. Besides, the question of superiority or inferiority never made much sense in the grand scheme of things to begin with. Men and women were two essential cogs for society. They couldn't live without the other, and they never needed to compete. If men took arms to battles, then women had their own battlefields to fight on. That was what she believed as she progressed up the social stratum, but now she found herself caught in a position between the two cogs, and she couldn't help but find it ironic. For there was already another woman in the very same spot long before her. Eleanor von Wittenberg. She had also been part of the BDM and had graduated with the highest honors. While not in the same fashion as Lisa, she too was the face of German women. She was the first female German officer. That, coupled with her family's respectable status, allowed her to attain a position so high propaganda labeled her as the warrior princess. At the time, Lisa had a higher rank, but Eleanor possessed more social influence. That was something Lisa could not stand. It wasn't a rivalry or anything like that. She just found Eleanor dangerous, simple as that. She couldn't acknowledge her. There were girls at Lebensborn who admired Eleanor, so much so that there were some who'd said their dream was to join the army like her. That was something Lisa couldn't accept. She believed that men and women had their own spheres, and that it was common courtesy not to cross over into the other. In other words, Lisa was a conservative while Eleanor was a liberal, and in this case, the latter was the one gaining more support. As such, Lisa thought she was dangerous. She knew full well that Eleanor in truth was disgusted by their own gender. Normal women could never imitate her, and she offered no aid or sympathy for those who tried. After all, even the Führer of their Third Reich had once remarked that the country would fall apart if women began to self-assert themselves. So her personal views and feelings aside, in terms of ability and the circumstances of their country, Eleanor's sycophants had virtually no chance of finding reward and happiness. And Lisa wished to stop that. That woman was special, abnormal. Her stories were nothing more than a sham, an imitation of the Nibelungen's ride of the Valkyries, built up by propagandists to appeal to the Führer's love of opera. As a modern country, Germany did deny women civil rights and spirit of independence. Once they got too strong, the government would start to suppress them. The battlefield for women, known as the font of life that Lisa had nurtured, was about to fall into a dangerous position. The Nazis' top brass were generally all cruel and cool-headed. She couldn't stand the idea of Lebensborn becoming a mere farm where women were treated as livestock or machines, made for the sole purpose of giving birth. But what could she do? Trapped by such anguished thoughts, Lisa found her answer on December 24th, 1939, a date which changed her life forever. There was a man known as Reinhard Heydrich. There was a man known as Karl Kraft. Lisa could clearly see what dangerous beings those two were, but at the same time she was enchanted by their power. She would gain strength under their command and overpower Eleanor, so that the common women of the world would not stray off track, to protect the values of the font of life. That was what she thought, what she believed. Lisa sold her soul to the devil. Was that a sound decision? Was it worth it? Back then, she felt she had no other choice. One could say she was nigh obsessed. For Eleanor, too, had sold her soul to the devil. She, too, had been enchanted by the very same men on the same day as Lisa. Eleanor would join them and gain even more power. So if Lisa didn't follow suit, she'd end up left far behind. And she couldn't let that come to pass. Hence, a darker side to the font of life, Lebensborn, was born on that day. To begin with, the organization had been established for the proliferation of the German population and the preservation of their bloodline's purity. Women's duty to the fatherland was to keep their bloodlines going, to give birth to new lives, raise them, and send them off into the world. As long as they kept that, they would preserve their people's identity and keep the country stable. The act of giving birth and raising life, the holy mission of creating thoroughbreds. that sense, there wasn't much of a difference between what they did on the surface and what they did behind closed doors. Where the definitive difference lay was exactly what kind of thoroughbreds they aimed to create.
今日はスプーンを曲げれたの。昨日はカードの絵が見えたの。
In other words, this was what they did in the new Lebensborn.
ゼイツイヒとアーツェンは喋れないけど、二人だけのお話はできるみたい。
That's 16 and 18, by the way.
少し頭が痛いかな。鼻血がずっと止まらない。ねえ、ムッタ。踏んだ後が動かなくなっちゃったよ。もう6時間もお目目をずっと開けっぱなし。
The goal of the organization shifted to create Ubermensch, children born with channels normal people didn't possess. Most of them lived short lives, so they would end up destroying themselves by being unable to control their own powers. There was a purpose to giving them codes for names. It was the most effective way to deprive them of identity, essentially detaching them both from society and every concept of common sense. In short, they were treated like prisoners.
楽しいね。悲しいね。でも僕たちは幸せなんだ。
Yet the children smiled. Of course they did. They were made that way. By this point in time, Lisa's original intentions had long been abandoned. It wasn't as though she'd forgotten them. She simply had no time. It was a stark contradiction for a woman who was meant to nurture lives to end up exploiting them. But she had to get results, even if it meant 1,000 failures. The situation was just that pressing. The tide of war was turning against them. The destruction of the fatherland was looking more and more viable by the day. She had to make a turnabout. As she watched the corpses of children pile up behind closed doors at Lebensborn, Lisa dreamed that their sacrifices would save Germany's future. She was well aware of how harsh the loss of war could be. Among her comrades were savages that had been born precisely through the twisted state of affairs their previous defeat had caused. She couldn't let Germany return back to that state. It was her duty as a woman. The two commanders of the Obsidian Round Table admired her. Karl Kraft in particular frequented Lebensborn. His mysterious and uncanny presence stood out above all else to Lisa, but the children were much more split. There were those who found him charming, and those who found him creepy.
この人、知ってる。なんだか怖い。前にお菓子をもらったよ。いい人なんじゃないのかな。でも、目が僕たちを見ていない。誰も見ていない。
The ones who found him creepy were mainly children who'd actually seen others. She could easily guess that he'd had some sort of lurid past, but if that was all they'd been afraid of, Lisa wouldn't have been all that surprised. However, it appeared that was not the case.
じゃあ、心の色を見通せる？前にそういうことができるって言ってたじゃない。見えないの。この人だけは見えないの。
They couldn't see what they should have. The Esper children described the man as a moving illustration.
ところで、君の名前は何だっけ？タウゼントだよ。なんだ。もうそんなに増えたんだね。
Yes, their count had already reached 4 digits. It was too much for Lisa. The numbers reminded her of the amount of children she had killed. She decided to start labeling them by something else.
フィオツェンとツバンツヒがいなくなっちゃったよ。一番お兄さんだった。なのに。
Okay, so I need to go over these numbers. 100, hopefully you can figure out that's 100. Tausend is 1,000. Viersane is 15. Zwanzig is 20. Hold on. That's fine, try. No, Viersane should be 14, not 15. It'd be Fumsane, that's 15.
きっとだからダメなんだよ。大きくなっちゃったらダメだって。
That's mother,
ム
by the
ッ
way.
ターが言ってた。僕たちは大丈夫？わからないけど大きくなりたくないね。このままがいいね。この泉にずっといたいね。ねえ、君の名前は何番？僕はもうそういうのじゃないんだよ。前にタオゼントが数字を気にするようになって止まっちゃったんでしょ。なんだか変なことを言ってたの。ここはお墓だって。変だよね。変だね。血管がある子の言うことはよくわからない。で、君の名前は？マリーネ・ブラ
Blue Marine?
オ。色なんだね。色なんだよ。僕から以降はそうなるらしい。
That might be Aquamarine, to be precise.
クリューンが生まれたら
Green?
僕たちは。なんだって？なんでもないよ。
Here an Ubermensch referred to those who could endure Karlkraft's sorcery. Not being part of the normal himself, he did not possess the eyes of a common man. He did not care for the bottom line, and as such his sorcery possessed no versatility. In the end, only an Ubermensch could give birth to Ubermensch through this method. But then what was to be done? Lise already knew the answer. Both in public and behind doors, Lebensborn had been realized onto the field of eugenics. Put simply, the children of geniuses had a higher chance of becoming geniuses themselves, so crossing talented men and women should yield the best results, the process of creating human thoroughbreds. So, to chime in real quick, if you don't know what eugenics is, this is a field that should be outlawed by now, but it's basically selectively breeding humans for certain traits. This had come into play even in America, sadly. So there were two periods of this in U.S. history, if you want to know. The first was during slavery, how the slave owners would try to breed their slaves to be bigger, stronger, and dumber. It's sad, but that's the morality of the time, and sadly, 100 years later, things had not improved because the next eugenics program focused on the mentally disabled. So those born with retardation, Down syndrome, any sort of abnormality that impacted their intelligence, they would immediately be sterilized. And in some cases, more grotesque things would be done. The worst of which that I can think of would be lobotomization. Yes, they would cut off part of their brain. And the most famous example I can think of this, I can't remember the woman's name right now, but it was JFK and RFK's younger sister. She had a lobotomy, I believe, because she had some sort of degree of retardation. I don't know what it was exactly. And I believe she actually did die from it. And now, if you're wondering about the next part, the whole Children of Geniuses thing, this has actually been attempted. I don't know where all entirely, because I believe there was a human experiment done in Indiana in the US. Basically, a group of intellectuals decided they would breed amongst themselves to try to produce individuals who were even more intelligent. And if you want to know how the entire thing played out, it failed. So, this is theory that has been disproven. Environment plays a pretty important role in generating intelligence, and they haven't been able to reproduce that detail just yet. So in case you're curious about development, it's a combination of genetics plus environment. Karlkraft's sorcery, the transmutation of gold, the conjuration of immortality, the swastika. And at the core of it was Veritas, Sonnenkind, the divine child of the sun. These 11,000 children died just to give birth to one. At that point, she had but one last method at her disposal. Eugenics. Just as the children of geniuses were geniuses themselves, so would the children of Ubermensch also be Ubermenschen. The result appeared a year later. It was both a great success and a great failure. For by that point, Lisa had looked back on and reevaluated her deeds. The child she had conceived and gave birth to from her own womb truly was the monster she had desired.
彼はゴルト。なのに別の名前がある。イザーク。イザーク。怖いイザーク。一番年下なのに一番怖い。誰も彼をゴルトと呼ばない。近寄りたくない。だけど嫌われたくない。イザークに嫌われたら全部終わっちゃうんだって。みんながみんな知っていた。でもイザークは僕らを見てない。イザークは何も見てない。その目はなんだかおかしくて、角度を変えれば金の色に見えたんだ。この泉を干上がらせる太陽みたいに。父親にそっくりだって僕らのムタが泣いていたんだ。
Indeed, she was scared of her own child. She couldn't bear to look at his eyes. Eyes that possessed all the 5 colors of pentachroma. His gaze always seemed disinterested by the world, and he'd had teeth from the day he was born. His growth was beyond natural. By the time he was 1, he already looked like a 5-year-old, and he'd probably look 10 in another year. The more he grew each day, the more he resembled his father. As such, she couldn't bear to look him in the eye. He was a living reminder of her past sins. What had she done? What in the world had she been thinking? For the fatherland, for the future. Ridiculous. Reinhard Heydrich and Karl Kraft never cared for such things. Lisa had finally opened her eyes to reality. But as a result, she couldn't run away from the guilt that had accompanied her return to sanity. She had to atone for her sins. That was why both the transmutation of gold and Sonnenkind, who was to be its sacrifice, were necessary. Isaac saw no one or anything. His gaze was just like his father's. He treated all and everything as inconsequential pebbles on the road. She feared those eyes, but at the same time, deep down Lisa was somewhat relieved. Because she felt like this child was one she could sacrifice. After all, she had another.
そう。だからこそ僕らはゼルバを仲間と思った。彼にも別の名前があったけど、ヨハン。かわいそうなヨハン。イザークの弟なのに全然似てない。誰も彼をゼルバと呼ばない。
Lisa felt him truly be her son. The child whose magical aptitude had all been taken by his older brother. And as such, leaving him a perfectly ordinary boy.
友達になろう。一緒にいよう。君も出来損ないなんだから。イザークが生まれるためだけに僕らは存在したんだから。ねえ、なのにどうしてヨハン？僕らは同じ泉の子供で同じ失敗作なのに、どうしてヨハン？君一人だけが生きてるの？
Indeed, Lisa had given Isaac up to the Obsidian Round Table and had Johann flee Berlin when its end drew near. She told her comrades he had died and they believed her story. Lisa was indeed very skilled at cover-ups, and they never had any interest in Johann's fate so long as they had Isaac in any case. As a result, Isaac set the swastika into operation when Berlin fell. Isaac had been forced to manifest Reinhardt's creation figment, the castle, for all eternity. His soul still formed the core of the Devil's Lair to this date. Isaac abandoned by his mother and brother.
かわいそうなイザーク。一人ぼっちのイザーク。友達がいなくてムッターにも怖がられて。ヨハンに にさえ逃げられたイザーク。君は一人だ。誰もいない。怖がってごめんね。仲間外れにしてごめんね。みんなで君のところに行くから。僕らは同じ泉の兄弟だから。だけどそれじゃあ今度はヨハンが一人ぼっちになっちゃうから。あの子も引きずっていくから許してね。逃がさないから。連れていくから。お願いイザーク。どうか僕らを嫌わないで。君に嫌われたら全部終わっちゃうんだってみんながみんな知っていた。
That was her lineage. Through the memories of the children of Lebensborn, Cosme had seen the life of a certain woman. Sister Lisa Brenner. Both her and Rhea's great-grandmother. And according to the priest, being her victims, those children by nature could not abandon a wounded soul. And so Cosme ended up using them. She had one very badly wounded one by her side after all. She wanted to let him rest, so he didn't have to hurt any longer. Those children meant no harm, so it was unlikely they'd try to take Ren away, but at the very least, it didn't seem like they'd let him wake up this night. She'd bring everything to a close while they kept him busy. Ren would have nothing to worry about anymore. She didn't go to die. After everything she'd learned, she understood that there was something now only she alone could do. Something that had been like her own little skeleton in the closet. She had to accept her punishment.
さあ、着いたけど、出迎えはないのかしら。
Just then, the church doors opened. Cosme instinctively put herself on guard, but the one who emerged was
レアさん。
none other than her upperclassmen, looking at her with both anger and exasperation.
"不公平だよね。不公平だよね。ねえ、なんであいつだけ生きてるの？おかしいね。うん、おかしいね。変だよね。僕らは、僕ら、名前なんだっけ？ヨハンだよ。一人だけ仲間外れのヨハン。かわいそうだね。かわいそうだね。ああ、だから。だから。ヨハンも仲間に入れてあげよう。そうしよう。
The innocent voices of children echoed all around me. I understood their circumstances and why they sympathized with me, and I also learned all about Cosme. Hence,
緑の泉で僕らは遊ぶ。緑の泉は楽しいところ。
sorry, but I don't have time to play with you anymore.
霧が深くて外が見えない。だけど僕らは怖くない。
I'm scared of losing her, so I'll be going.
ずっとここが僕の家。
I had to make up for destroying her home all those years ago.
ずっとここにいるみんなが兄弟。
I couldn't stay here forever.
緑の泉で僕らは遊ぶ。緑の泉は楽しいところ。僕らは太陽じゃないけれど、本当の太陽が生まれたから。 そこにみんなで集まろう。
And so I woke up. I couldn't just keep sleeping like that. She wanted to protect me. She thought to steal my chance to shine in the spotlight and resolve everything by herself before I woke up. Yeah, I could definitely sympathize with that idea. Anyone would. I would have done the same myself. I too had been fine with shedding blood and taking the full brunt of everything head-on if it meant keeping my loved ones out of danger. I thought it was okay if I shouldered everything by myself. It was no spirit of martyrdom or anything that noble. It was just my egotism. I knew that much. I knew it, but I couldn't help it. I mean, anyone had something or someone more important than themselves in their lives. To me, that was Cosme, and to her, that was me. That was all there was to it. I sat up. I wanted to protect her just as much as she wanted to protect me. The children of Lebensborn had already vanished. They had possessed me back at the amusement park, and though I normally shouldn't have awoken until everything had ended, here I was, awake. I probably wouldn't have woken up out of sheer willpower or anything. It was more likely they found something at a deeper layer of my consciousness that even they couldn't affect. Something that both Cosme and Father Trifa had failed to take into account. I hadn't seen, heard, or even felt her presence all that much lately, but she still saved me. I couldn't let that go to waste. Now that I was awake, I couldn't just sit back and leave everything up to Kasumi. That wasn't my style. Just like she was trying to do all she could, I too would do all what I was here to do.
悪い、なんかすげえ嫌な夢見た。
私も女的にお腹痛いわ。
The children of Lebensborn would entrap those denied parental love. Seemed Shiro and Hancho had received their fair share of the spell and fallen asleep too. They entered the room rubbing their eyes.
どんな夢だったかは言わないでいい。知ってる。
ああ、ああ、なるほどね。
かすみちゃんはいないと。
そういうことだ。
Those two were sharp. They had understood everything with barely a word. We'd been given the shaft by Cosme and Father Trifa, but this was where the main event truly began. In that moment, we had learned nearly everything about the situation and were in perfect sync. Now was the time for us to turn the tables.
行くぞ。あのバカスミぶん殴らないと気が済まない。
オッケー。つうかあの神父はあいつにどうこうできるほど甘くねえよ。
そんなに舐めてやるのもどうかと思うけど。
Hanjo made a wry smile.
でもまあ、私らは舐められたな。すっこんでろとか腹立つわ。
同感だな。
This was a battle of our egos. She gave me a slap in the face, so I couldn't help but want to return the favor.
別に俺らにまで一服盛らなくても生きたきりゃ行かせてやるのに。
ねえ、その方が面白いのに。
I kinda want to give those idiots a smacking too now, but an argument was the last thing we needed at this point.
よーし、じゃあ行くか。
We knew where Cosme was going.
教会だね。
That was where we'd have our final battle. All that was left were Wilhelm, Sakurai, and Valeria Trifa. We had to get rid of all three of them in a single sweep.
俺らが一番最初に連中と絡んだのも思えば教会だったよな。
そうね。だからキリがいい。
俺もそうだよ。
The first member of the Obsidian Roundtable I encountered was neither Wilhelm nor Rizulka, but Father Trifa. I still haven't forgotten the day I went to the church with him.
カスミ、
And Himuro.
待ってろ。すぐに行ってやる。
I voiced my resolve and left Bottomless Pit with Shiro and Hanjo. I was expecting another short chapter, to be honest. This does not surprise me in the slightest. So, 9 lances, 6 of 8 swastikas, Chapter 12, Skeleton in the Closet End. So overall this is more like a story about Lisa and how Cosme fits into the big picture.